Hey, beautiful people, and welcome to my channel. If you're new, thanks for giving me a chance and stopping by. Sorry I haven't been on lately. I've been a bit on the sick side, but anyway, I may be on later today. I don't know. I will be on tomorrow. Um, Trying to get back into the swing of things. So, anyway, with that said, let's get on with the program. And I do have a comment of the week for you. Hey, Robert. And this week's comment of the week, can be found under Eric Can't Theologize Good, Creation Today. And it is by Warren Smith. Congratulations, Warren. Uh, My research indicates that the Gospel of Mark was written after Josephus wrote his Wars of the Jews. The story of Joseph of Arimathea is an allegoric retelling of Josephus saved Christians from further persecution by deliberately hiding their involvement in the Jewish revolt. Josephus used a form of Kabbalah to inform his readers about what he had done in his own crucifixion account that clearly parallels the Joseph of Arimathea story. Here is Josephus' version from his biography. And when I was sent by Titus Caesar with the Cerealians and 1,000 horsemen to a certain village called Theochus, in order to know whether it was a place fit for a camp, as I came, I saw many captives crucified and remembered 3 of them as my former acquaintances. I was very sorry at this in my mind and went in tears to Titus and told him of them. So he immediately commanded them to be taken down and to have the greatest care taken of them in order to their recovery. Yet 2 of them died under the physician's hands, while the 3rd recovered. Very strange that he has 3 friends, don't you think? All right, moving on. The fact this passage appears to offer no direct connection to Christ or Christians has prevented this passage from being discussed as anything more than an example of how Christ may have survived his own crucifixion. However, if the mention of the place called Thekoa, the failure to clearly identify the victim he saved, and Josephus' apparently unmanly plea to Titus are taken together, they serve as an allusion to the Old Testament woman from Tekoa, whose story is told in 2 Samuel 14. The passage opens with, "So Joab, son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was concerned with Absalom, and Joab sent to Tekoa and brought there a wise woman and said to her, Please pretend to be a mourner and put on mourning apparel. Do not anoint yourself with oil, but act like a woman who has been in mourning a long time for the dead. Go to the king and speak to him in this manner." So Joab put words in her mouth. Then the woman went to King David and pretended that she is pleading for the life of her own son, but she was really setting David up to accept the idea of sparing the life of his own traitorous son Absalom. This obviously suggests that the man that Josephus saved was the son of David. However, this is then further interpreted from the context to be understood as representing Christians as a group. The presence of a man named Creolins in Josephus' account can also be connected to Christ if you understand the name Cerealians as an allusion to the Roman festival of Cerealis, which was held every April to celebrate the Roman goddess Ceres, who was the mother of the dying and rising goddess Proserpina, which then provides a clear parallel to Easter. This disguising of names is explained in Plato's Cratylus, and Josephus offers another example in his autobiography when he writes, excuse me, marched to the village of Cibolo, situated in the confines of Ptolemais, and there kept my forces together, pretending to get ready to fight in the place of Placidus. And you can read on from there, but it's quite an interesting read. Hey, Limited. All right, now let me share my screen. Alrighty. Let's see, there we go. And let me make sure you can see it. Alrighty, here we go. Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah, and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. The king and his officials and the whole assembly in Jerusalem decided to celebrate the Passover in the second month. They had not been able to celebrate at the regular time because not enough priests had consecrated themselves, and the people had not assembled in Jerusalem. The plan seemed right both to the king and to the whole assembly. The plan seemed right to the king and the whole assembly. Gee, I wonder why they didn't ask God. Could it be that God don't do the real and they just decided they were going to do it anyway? Alrighty, moving on. Verse 4. The plan seemed right both to the king and to the whole assembly. They decided to send a proclamation throughout Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling to the people to come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. It had not been celebrated in large numbers according to what was written. And the king's command couriers went throughout Israel and Judah with letters from the king and from his officials, which read, People of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he may return to you who are left to have escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. Do not be like your parents and your fellow Israelites who were unfaithful to the Lord, the God of their ancestors, so that he made them an object of horror, as you see. Do not be stiff-necked as your ancestors were. Submit to the Lord, come to his sanctuary, which he has consecrated forever. Serve the Lord your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. Yeah, you could say that God delivered you into Assyria's hands. Or, you could do the obvious thing and say, well, Assyria was just stronger than we were. But that doesn't save a whole lot of face now, does it? Of course it doesn't. So you got to blame it on God, right? Blame it on God. Makes more sense than blaming it on us. We just weren't ready. So we're just going to blame it on God. Verse 9. If you return to the Lord, then your fellow Israelites and your children will be shown compassion by their captors and will return to this land, for the Lord your God is gracious and compassionate. He will not turn his face from you if you return to him. I'd like to know how you know that. Verse 10. The couriers went from town to town in Ephraim and Manasseh as far as Zebulun, but people scorned and ridiculed them. Nevertheless, some from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. Why do you need to go to Jerusalem to keep Passover? Jews keep Passover all the time, and it's not in Jerusalem. I can tell you that much for sure. Verse 12. Also in Judah, the hand of God was on the people to give them unity of mind, to carry out what the king and his officials had ordered, following the word of the Lord. Yeah, or they were just scared of the king, because the king could do whatever he wanted. Verse 13. A very large crowd of people assembled in Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of unleavened bread in the second month. They removed the altars in Jerusalem and cleared away the incense altars and threw them into the Kidron Valley. They slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the second month. The priests and Levites were ashamed and consecrated themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of the Lord. Then they took up their regular positions as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of God. The priests splashed against the altar the blood handed to them by the Levites. Cult of blood, people, cult of blood. Although I will say Christianity's even bloodier. So what do you expect? Since many in the crowd had not consecrated themselves, the Levites had to kill the Passover lambs for all those who were not ceremonially clean and could not consecrate their lambs to the Lord. Although most of the people who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves, yet they ate the Passover contrary to what was written. But Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, May the Lord, who is good, pardon everyone who sets their heart on seeking God, the Lord, the God of their ancestors, even if they are not clean, according to the rules of the sanctuary. And the Lord heard Hezekiah and healed the people. The Israelites who were present in Jerusalem celebrated the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days with great rejoicing, while the Levites and priests praised the Lord every day with resounding instruments dedicated to the Lord. Hezekiah spoke encouragingly to all the Levites who showed good understanding of the service of the Lord. For the 7 days they ate their assigned portion and offered fellowship offerings and praised the Lord, the God of their ancestors. The whole assembly then agreed to celebrate the festival 7 more days. So for another 7 days they celebrated joyfully. Okay, so you're just throwing out God's rule book and you're just doing whatever the fuck you want. Why don't you just say that? Verse 24. Hezekiah, king of Judah, provided 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep and goats for the assembly, and the officials provided them with 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep and goats. A great number of priests consecrated themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced, along with the priests and Levites who had all assembled from Israel, including foreigners who had come from Israel, and also those who resided in Judah. There was great joy in Jerusalem, for since the day of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, there had been nothing like this in Jerusalem. The priests and Levites stood to bless the people, and God heard them, for their prayer reached heaven in a holy place. When all this had ended, the Israelites who went out to the towns of Judah smashed the sacred stones and cut down the Asherah poles. They destroyed the high places and the altars throughout Judah and Benjamin and in Ephraim and Manasseh. After they had destroyed all of them, the Israelites returned to their own towns and to their own property. Verse 2. Hezekiah assigned the priests and Levites and divisions, each of them according to their duties as priests or Levites, to offer burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, to minister, to give thanks, and to sing praises at the gates of the Lord's dwelling. The king contributed from his own possessions for the morning and evening burnt offerings, and for the burnt offerings on the Sabbaths, and at the new moons, and at the appointed festivals. He ordered the people together in Jerusalem to give the portions due to the priests and Levites so they could devote themselves to the law of the Lord. As soon as the order went out, the Israelites generously gave the first fruits of their grain, new wine, olive oil, and honey, and all that the fields produced. They brought a great amount, a tithe of everything. The people of Israel and Judah who lived in the towns of Judah also brought a tithe of their herds and flocks, a tithe of the holy things dedicated to the Lord their God, and they piled them in heaps. They began doing this in the 3rd month and finished in the 7th month. When Hezekiah and his officials came and saw the heaps, they praised the Lord and blessed his people Israel. Hezekiah asked the priests and Levites about the heaps, and Azariah, the chief priest from the family of Zadok, answered, "Since the people began to bring their contributions to the temple of the Lord, we have had enough to eat and plenty to spare, because the Lord has blessed his people, and this great amount is left over." Hezekiah gave orders to prepare storerooms in the temple of the Lord, and this was done. Then they faithfully brought the contributions, tithes, and dedicated guests, Conaniah, a Levite and overseer of the charged things, and his brother Shemaiah was next in rank. Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Josabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah were assistants of Conaniah and Shemaiah, his brother, all served by appointment, of King Hezekiah and Azariah, the official in charge of the temple of God. Kor, son of Imnah, the Levite keeper over the east gate, was in charge of the freewill offerings given to God, distributing the contributions made to the Lord, and also the consecrated gifts. Eden, Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah assisted him faithfully in the towns of the priests, distributing to their fellow priests according to their divisions, old and young alike. In addition, they distributed to the males 3 years and more, whose names were in the genealogical records, all who would enter the temple of the Lord to perform daily duties of their various tasks according to their responsibilities and divisions. They distributed to the priests enrolled by their families in genealogical records, and likewise to the Levites 20 years old or more according to their responsibilities and divisions. They included all the little ones and wives and sons and daughters of the whole community listed in the genealogical records, for they were faithful in consecrating themselves. As for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who lived in the farmlands around their towns or in any other towns, men designated by name to distribute portions to every male among them and to all who were recorded in the genealogies of the Levites. This is what Hezekiah did throughout Judah, doing what was good and right and faithful before God. In everything he undertook in the service of God's temple and obedience to the law and commands, he sought his God and worked wholeheartedly, and so he prospered. Excuse me. All right. Yeah, that was a lot. All right, let's move on. We got one more. Uh, excuse me. Got one more chapter, people. Chapter 32. After all that Hezekiah had so faithfully done, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah. He laid siege. Imagine that. Hezekiah's been faithful, and Judah and Jerusalem's been faithful, and they get sacked. Guess their God wasn't powerful after all. He laid siege to the fortified cities, thinking to conquer them for himself. When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and that he intended to wage war against Jerusalem, he consulted his officials and military staff about blocking off the water from the springs outside the city, and they helped him. They gathered a large group of people who blocked all the springs and the stream that flowed through the land. Why should the kings of Assyria come and find plenty of water? They said. Then he worked hard at repairing all the broken sections of the wall and building towers on it. It didn't dawn on you to do that, before you got sacked. You must not be a very good king. He built another wall outside that one and reinforced the terraces of the city of David. He also made large numbers of weapons and shields. He appointed military officers over the people and assembled them before him in the square at the city gate and encouraged them with these words: Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Assyria and the vast army with him, for there is a greater power with us than with them. With him is only the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. And the people gained confidence from what Hezekiah, the king of Judah, said. Yeah, you know what? Why don't these people ever lean on themselves? Why is it always, oh, we got to lean on God? Hmm? Why? Why is it always we got to lean on God? I'm sure he'd appreciate the useless slackers leaning on themselves for once. Excuse me. Verse 9. Later, when Sennacherib, king of Syria, and all his forces were laying siege to Lachish, he sent his officers to Jerusalem with this message for Hezekiah, king of Judah, and for all the people of Judah who were there. This is what Sennacherib, king of Assyria, says. On what are you basing your confidence that you remain in Jerusalem under siege, when Hezekiah says, The Lord your God will save us from the hand of the king of Assyria? He is misleading you to let you die of hunger and thirst. Did not Hezekiah himself remove this God's high places and altar, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, You must worship before one altar and burn sacrifices on it? Do you not know what I and my predecessors have done to all peoples of the other lands? Were the gods of those nations ever able to deliver their land from my hand? Okay, so let me explain what's going on here, because you may not understand this in the context of what was going on in that day and time. Assyria was the most feared empire at that time. Ugh, excuse me. In fact, it was so feared that if a city heard that Assyria was on its way, they just threw open the gates of the city. Because Assyria's fierce reputation preceded it. And that is, if the Assyrians had to fight to get into a city, they would fight to the death. And they would make the people of the city pay for defying them. By usually killing the people. Now, if the people went ahead and just gave up before they even started to rebel, then the Assyrians would spare most of the people. Most, but not all. But most. All right. So that's what he's talking about here. And so basically Sennacherib is beating his chest and saying, hey, look, Hezekiah, you really want me to come in and kill everybody? Because that's what I'm going to do if you make me fight. All right, verse 14. Who of all the gods of these nations that my predecessors destroyed has been able to save people from me? How then can your God deliver you from my hand? Now do not let Hezekiah deceive you and mislead you like this. Do not believe him, for no God of any nation or kingdom has been able to deliver his people from my hand or the hand of my predecessors. How much less will your God deliver you from my hand? Sennacherib's officers spoke further against the Lord God and against his servant Hezekiah. The king also wrote letters ridiculing the Lord, the king of Israel, and saying this against him. Just as the gods of the people of other lands did not rescue their people from my hand, so the God of Hezekiah will not rescue his people from my hand. Then they called out in Hebrew to the people of Jerusalem who were on the wall to terrify them and make them afraid in order to capture the city. They spoke about the God of Jerusalem as they did about the gods of other peoples of the world, the work of human hands. King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, cried out in prayer to heaven about this, and the Lord sent an angel who annihilated all the fighting men and all the commanders and officers in the camp of the Assyrian king. So he withdrew to his own land in disgrace. And when he went into the temple of his God, some of his sons, his own flesh and blood, cut him down with the sword. So the Lord saved Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and from the hand of all others. He took care of them on every side. Many brought offerings to Jerusalem for the Lord and the valuable gifts for Hezekiah, king of Judah. From then on, he was highly regarded by all the nations. In those days, Hezekiah became ill and was at the point of death. He prayed to the Lord, who answered him and gave him a miraculous sign. But Hezekiah's heart was proud, and he did not respond to the kindness shown him. Therefore, the Lord's wrath was on him and on Judah and Jerusalem. Then Hezekiah repented of the pride of his heart, as did the people of Jerusalem. Therefore the Lord's wrath did not come on them during the days of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was very wealthy and honored and made treasures for his silver and gold and precious stones, spices, shields, and all kinds of valuables. He also made buildings to store the harvest grain, new wine, and olive oil, and he made stalls for various kinds of cattle pens for the flocks. He built villages and acquired great numbers of flocks and herds and riches. It was Hezekiah who blocked the upper outlet of the Gihon spring and channeled the water down to the west side of the city of David. He succeeded in everything he undertook, but when the envoys were sent by the rulers of Babylon to ask him about the miraculous sign that had occurred in the land, God left him to test him and to know everything that was in his heart. I just gotta know, why does God have to test anybody again? I mean, he's God. He knows everything, right? As logic said, the purpose to test somebody is to know what they know. But God already knows everything. So why is he testing again? Verse 32. The other events of Hezekiah's reign and his acts of devotion are written in the vision of the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. Hezekiah rested with his ancestors and was buried on the hill where the tombs of David's descendants are. All Judah and the people of Jerusalem honored him when he died, and Manasseh his son succeeded him as king. Alrighty. And that brings us, excuse me, and that brings us to the end of another Saturday live stream. Like I said, I may be on later today. I don't know. I do know I'm going to be on tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Excuse me. Excuse me. And yeah. So if you haven't done this already, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment. It's good for the algorithm. Share this on social media, and let's see. Oh, and if you are financially able, please become a member of this channel. You can become a member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get custom emojis and you get debunks early. Also, you can make one-time donations on my PayPal account, so you can also do that. And I will see you later. Bye, everyone, and have a nice day.